Hello again. Welcome to the program. Let's begin from Parliament, where the minority in the House is accusing the majority of deliberately undermining proceedings of the Public Accounts Committee during the consideration of a special audit report into a staggering 68 billion Ghana cedis in arrears. Chairman of the committee, Abno Sayasai, raised the issue on the floor over what she described as a coordinated move by the majority to pull out their numbers, effectively stalling scrutiny of the audit report. Before we bring you what is happening in the chamber, here is James Aveji with what happened at the Accounts Committee hearing.
The majority in Parliament move their members to the chamber, even though this is also a national assignment that we have been mandated to do as members of the House Committee. So this was like to bring our business to an end. He working, he's standing out there and helping members. Once the ranking leaves and there's no available ranking, this meeting cannot continue. You know, we abide by rules and laws. So sorry. Thank you. Respectfully, we'll have to continue tomorrow.
Barely 7 minutes after that announcement has been made by the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, and as you can see, the committee room is empty now, as all of the members of Parliament have left the proceedings here, going to the chamber to go and conduct that quote-unquote urgent government business. You will only see a number of the Ministry of Energy staff and some parliamentary staff behind me also trying to get over what we just experienced, the shock of public account business grinding to a halt because one side of the House has whipped out all of its members, leaving no member of the majority to chair the affairs of the committee, bringing the probe into that 68 billion arrears special audit report to a grind here in the Public Accounts Committee sitting. I've been covering this for at least 4 years, and this is the first time I'm also experiencing this happening in Parliament, where proceedings have to grind to a halt because an urgent government business needed to be attended to. In fact, sometimes that happens, but to the extent where every single member, including the member chairing the affairs, would have to leave, leading to proceedings grinding to a halt, is the first time I'm also witnessing this. It occurred with the deputy the deputy whip of the majority, Richard Echampong, walking into the committee room and speaking to some members, and one after the other they started leaving the room, and later some few seconds later the chairperson of the committee had to give that announcement. The reason why this had to happen is because since this report is coming, or the infractions in this report happened under the NPP government, according to the orders of the House, an NDC ranking member on the committee is supposed to chair the affairs. Today, the ranking member himself, Samuel Atames, have been absent from the proceedings. It's unclear what took him away from the proceedings. Very unusual of him not to sit during the PAC committee probings, but it has to take a member of the committee from the majority side, Honorable Ahenkwa, to sit in to steer the affairs of the committee. But because all members of the majority side are needed, the proceedings have to grind to a halt. Chairperson of the committee, Abna Osasari, speaks to me exclusively, indicating her shock, especially when this report is coming from the majority and when businesses from both the floor and committee levels always proceeds without any interruption, and how this has to happen even when the majority has as many as 189 members on the floor.
To all of us too, because this is a report that was submitted by the majority, and it boils down to national issues, which we are all trying very well to see how best we can bring back that confidence. And so we have invited auditees. We are in the engagement. You saw that we had begun with Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, and some very scary issues had come out already, with the overstatement of debts to suppliers to the tune of 1.396 billion, with claims and commitments that had been rejected to the tune of 4.4 billion. So we were all trying to see how we can get to the root of this situation that they took. Because this is a report that the minister was happy to bring to Parliament to tell the whole world this is the problem and how do we address the problem. We are here trying to find solutions, and it's been cut short. But we will come back tomorrow and continue with it.
I remember you were given 3 weeks to deal with this report and bring the recommendations.
That is what I mentioned, that this is a report that Mr. Speaker referred to our committee, and we've been given 3 weeks. In these 3 weeks, we've had to go through a lot of processes. One, to make sure every member gets the report. It took about 3-4 days for members to get the report. Usually with every audit report that is referred to our committee, we engage the auditors to take us through, for us to have a better understanding before we come and sit in public. And so we wrote to the auditors, and on last Wednesday, they came and they took us through the reports. It's a volume 1 and volume 2 reports. They took us through. We also need to write to invitees to come in, give them time to prepare adequately. And so after Wednesday, we give them another week, and we start in this Wednesday. So today is the first day of our sitting, and we are hoping to sit till next week, Tuesday, where we conclude, and then we inform Mr. Speaker of our findings.
Idea about that urgent business on the floor for which the majority have been whipped out?
No, I'm now going to find out. But whatever it is, this is also urgent. This is equally important. And so I don't see why the majority will have to come and call their members. Like I said, once the available ranking is not there, we cannot continue, because this is a House of Lords.
Hopefully, the committee will be reporting again on Thursday to continue with its investigation into that particular special audit report. But as to whether they can meet the Speaker's 3 weeks deadline to present recommendations, only time will tell. James Savaji here from Parliament.
So the big question we're asking this afternoon on the polls is whether the majority is abusing its huge numbers. Let's bring in Abnel Sayasari. She is the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. Madam Chairperson, grateful for your time this afternoon. So how will this walkout by the majority affect the work of PAC?
Good afternoon. I must say that when Ghanaians give you an opportunity in a very special way, I say in a very special way, looking at the majority of seats that Ghanaians have given to the NDC, you don't abuse it. I see this clearly as an abuse of their majority. Why do I say so? I thought there was an urgent government business on the floor. We closed from the Public Accounts Committee, and then we went to the chamber, and sitting hadn't even begun. We went to the chamber thinking there was an urgent government business on the floor of Parliament. Sitting hadn't begun. Eventually, when sitting began, we began with statements. Statements are important. But are they so important that we have invited people from various ministries, departments, and agencies? They are waiting for their turn to explain their side of the audit. But then we had to ask them to leave because we didn't have the quorum to continue with business. Only for us to come to the floor of Parliament and see that, one, sitting hadn't even begun, and two, when sitting began, it was statements and not urgent government business. This is how the majority is abusing the trust that Ghanaians have reposed in them. We will come back and continue with this work because we see it as a national assignment that we ought to take and bring back the confidence that our people have in the public financial management of our finances. Like I said, this is not the first time an issue like this has happened in terms of government validating arrears. In 2016, when we inherited power in 2017, we also did say there was an arrears of about 11.8 billion. We sent all the documentation to the auditors to verify. The auditors verified 6.3 and rejected 5.4 billion. So clearly, it should tell you that this issue is structural and we need to get to the root of it. And that is what we began this morning.
Right.
And we hope we won't be given the chance to interrogate things further and see how best we, together as parliamentarians, can bring some lasting solutions to these structural changes. Whenever there's a new government, you tend to have some of these things. And I even mentioned that 2 companies that were mentioned or cited for infractions in the 2016 report have also been mentioned again in the 2024 report. So it is a serious issue, and we need to come together to make sure we address some of these things. So we have decided to reschedule to next week, Monday, when Parliament will be on recess, and then we will start from Monday and end on Thursday. We will also have to write to Mr. Speaker and inform him that the 3 weeks deadline is not feasible based on what has happened today.
And are you confident?
But clearly, we on the minority side are willing and ready to work. I don't know why majority submits a report to Parliament. They spearheaded it and they spent it even on the floor of Parliament. Now we are ready to go into it and you're running away in the name of what? Abusing your majority. But I don't think this is how we should go as a country.
Right. And are you confident that you are going to get the needed numbers from the majority side at the postponed date?
Their explanation on the floor, the first speaker said, well, it's the call of the whip, and he doesn't want to interfere in the call of the whip. I was a bit surprised that this came from a first deputy speaker of Parliament, because it was the same first deputy speaker who referred it to the Public Accounts Committee and gave us 3 weeks to have this thing done.
Have you had time? Have you had time to speak to the majority chief whip to ask him the reasons behind why he did what he did?
Yes. So yes, on the floor of Parliament, they said that yesterday the NPP raised an issue with quorum. But what is quorum? You need 1/3, and if you have 189, and the members, the Public Accounts Committee members from the majority side, I think 18. So 1/3 of 275, I mean, it's not equal to 18. That you equip all your members to come and sit, only for us to even come to the chamber and realize that even sitting hadn't even begun. And so they said, yes, yesterday the minority raised an issue with quorum. And so now they want all their members in the chamber anytime sitting is ongoing. But to be honest, we started at 9:30. 9:30, Parliament was not sitting. Even at 11:15, when they came to end proceedings, Parliament was still not sitting. So clearly, it's an abuse of power. But I think the people of Ghana are watching, and they have seen for themselves. We are ready to work, and we are ready to help find solutions to the issues that have been raised. Like I said, it is not about sensationalism.
Right.
It is not about scoring political points, but addressing the issue, because we have all noticed from reports that have been submitted to us by the Auditor General that this happens anytime there is a change in government. Remember, some of my colleagues even pointed out the fact that at the time these payments were done, even new ministers were not at post. So then how can you blame a new minister for issues like this when even the new ministers hadn't even gone through vetting to be vetted? So clearly there is a problem that we need to get to the root of.
Right.
And we should all be willing to make sure it happens by our conduct, by our action.
Please don't go yet. I'll come back to you. Let me also bring in Ato Forson, who is a former member of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee, and also joining me on the phone is the chairperson of PAC, Abna Osei-Asare, who we just heard from. Mr. Forson, welcome to the program. Let me pick your initial reaction to this seeming walkout, if you describe it that way, by the majority during the sitting of PAC today, which led to its suspension.
So just a little correction. I was a former member, ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, not a subsidiary committee.
Right. Thank you.
But what happened is not a walkout. The walkout is a protest. This was not a protest. Members of Parliament on the Public Accounts Committee were simply invited to return to the chamber of the House for official business. So it's not a walkout. And this is not new. In my 4 terms in Parliament, I've seen meetings come to an end abruptly because members on committees were wanted in the House. So it's not new at all. It's not new. And the chairperson knows that this is a practice that's on in Parliament when members of Parliament are needed on the floor of the House. Sometimes under a threat of quorum, committees can be meeting, and the whip will be sent out to call in members because there's a threat of quorum, and there's still government business to be transacted, to be performed. So it's not a walkout. It's a normal parliamentary business, parliamentary procedure, where members of Parliament sitting in committee meetings are requested to return to the House for official business to be conducted.
Right. There are those who are saying that this is an abuse of the majority's numbers, including the chairperson of the committee, who is on the phone with us, Abna Osei-Asare, given that the majority has about 189 members of Parliament. So really, it wouldn't have been a problem if they had others on the PAC and others also going to the chamber. Do you agree with her?
Well, it's not an abuse of the parliamentary privileges, and particularly the majority members on the committee. It's not an abuse at all. Now, it is the position of the majority, and when you called me to speak on this matter, I've made inquiries to Parliament, and I spoke to 2 majority members of the committee. It's a position of the majority that it puts them in very bad light when 3 meetings of committees are ongoing and they have to contribute about 75 members of their caucus to those meetings, and so depletes their number on the plenary, at the plenary. And that makes them look bad in the face of the public, because it will appear that they have no numbers in Parliament, when in actual fact, their members are sitting in committee meetings. They do not want that impression to be created. And so they've taken a decision that when Parliament is in session, committee meetings have to be suspended. And when I was in Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, once upon a time, took this decision. So it's a decision that speaks to the exigencies of the time, that where you are faced with a problem of quorum or low attendance on the floor of the House, you might want to suspend committee meetings or reschedule committee meetings in such a way that their time doesn't conflict with meetings of the plenary for the discharge of urgent or public business. And I'm happy to hear the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee say that they are reordering their affairs in such a way as to start when Parliament is not in session. That will remove the conflict, and the members of the majority will then have no excuse not to attend the Public Accounts Committee meetings. Neither will the Chief Whip come to issue an edict that members in the committee should return to the plenary because they will not be plenary. So that's a good arrangement. Other arrangements have been said that the committee meetings can take place in the mornings. When I was there, we could take a committee meeting at 7 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock. I remember Chairman Sabonso used to organize some meetings at 6 o'clock, so that by 10 o'clock you are finished with the committee meetings and you are available for the plenary, just because you have a responsibility to Ghanaians to ensure that the reason why we voted for the MPs is to discharge public business, and public business is discharged during plenary.
Mr. Forson, don't go yet. Let me bring back Abnao Sayasari. Madam Chairperson, you've been listening to your former colleague in Parliament, Inusa Forson, make the point that it is really not an abuse of the numbers of the majority, as you claimed.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon to Honourable Mr. Forson, a former colleague, yes, in Parliament. But I must say that I don't want to go back and forth on this. But clearly, if you have 189 and you need to form a quorum, you don't need more than 120 people to form a quorum. So assuming that even 3 committees are sitting, and under no circumstance would you have NDC members being 25 members on a committee, the maximum you would have is 18, and that is the Public Accounts Committee. Apart from the Public Accounts Committee, no committee has a very large number as 25, apart from the Public Accounts Committee. And their members are around 18. And so that 18 out of 189, it's insignificant. That is what I'm saying. And that is why I'm insisting that it is an abuse of power, because you knew that the Speaker had given us 3 weeks. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even quickly started on this report. But the Speaker, per the directive, gave us 3 weeks to finish and report back to the House. So we're trying very, very, very well to at least accommodate the request from the Speaker. And that is why we even began at 9 o'clock. But members couldn't come early, so we had to start at 9:30. And like I said, as at 11:15, when I went to the chamber, sitting hadn't begun. So if you tell me we're whipping members to come in for urgent government business, when sitting hadn't begun, what are you trying to say? They must admit that this time they goofed, they are abusing their numbers. But like I said, we want to move on. For us, we want to go ahead and sit on it, make it convenient for at least the invitees. Let me also mention that all the other committees are not like the Public Accounts Committee, where you have journalists coming in, where you have GTV and all the other radio stations in there, the media in there, as well as invitees from other places. Only for you to tell them that because the majority are being called into the chamber, you will have to excuse them and bring the meeting to an end. I don't think this is how we should show respect to the MDAs, the invitees that we have called, to the auditors who have, gone through, so much to get this report to us. I want to move on. So we have rescheduled from Monday to Thursday. We are hoping that we'll be able to finish and deliver the report. Even though we cannot do it in the 3 weeks that has been stipulated for us, we'll go ahead and deliver on the findings of the report to the Speaker, so that if Parliament comes back, returns from recess, and we can share the report. So, that is where I want to end it. But I don't think that this is not an abuse of power. Clearly, if an important government business was going on, we should have come to meet Parliament in session. But Parliament was not in session. We had to wait for about 20 minutes before Parliament started.
Right. And with this new rescheduled date, is it going to affect the work of the Public Accounts Committee in any way?
Because we've also, like I said, we also scheduled other meetings right after Easter. We are moving to Tamale and to also meet on with the secondary schools and the ministries, municipals metropolitans and district assemblies as well. So we have our work cut out for us. And that is why we're hoping that we will sit, work within the timelines given, and then we can move on to other equally important reports that we had already scheduled to meet. But that notwithstanding, we will try as much as possible to finish this and continue with the scheduled work of a program of activities that the public account has scheduled right after Easter.
And what is the minority and the House in general doing to ensure that this incident does not occur again?
The majority chief mentioned that we should have a discussion on this. So I believe leadership will go ahead. But this is clearly an abuse of power. So whatever discussion they want to have, this was clearly an abuse of power that shouldn't have happened the way it happened. That is all I want to say. But like I said, we are focused. We will finish. We found other ways of making sure we quickly finish it on Thursday, and then on Tuesday, go to Tamale and continue with the program of activities that we've scheduled for the Public Accounts Committee.
Ato Forson, thank you very much. She's the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. I still have Ato Forson with me. Mr. Forson, I will also want to ask you, going forward, what do you think the members of the House should do so that this incident that happened doesn't repeat itself?
Well, so I think that the members of the leadership of Parliament have already taken a decision to reorder. And I'm happy, like I said earlier, that the chairperson of the committee has taken the decision to reorder the activities of the Public Accounts Committee in such a way that it doesn't conflict with the plenary. Now, but Abuna, your Public Accounts Committee is a committee of Parliament. It's just like any other committee, except that because we attach, as Parliament attaches serious importance to public finances and the way our monies are used, and you want to carry the people of Ghana along. That is why Parliament, in its wisdom, said that the Public Accounts Committee must be a public committee whose process should be televised for all Ghanaians to see. And so it is not as if to say that the Public Accounts Committee takes some pride of place. No, it is just that the public interest perspective of the work of the Public Accounts Committee informs the decision to televise its proceedings. Now, the third thing I'm saying is that this is a needless brawl. You didn't have to quarrel over this. I mean, I'm happy that you are looking at the special audit report. Now, in 2017, we didn't have that opportunity. We didn't have that opportunity. And so now we have opportunity to look at that. In 2017, when the special audit report was compiled and released, even before it came to Parliament, the President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo had copied copious portions of the report into his State of the Nation address and validated the report thereby. We didn't have opportunity. Now we have opportunity to look at the report, see what can be done to the system to ensure that this constant post-regime accountability, which manifests itself in the form of an audited general report, will be a thing of the past. And so let's address our minds to the challenges that we face in ensuring that people do not take advantage of the system by virtue of a change in government.
Right. Ato Forson, thank you very much. He's a former MP for Tamale Central. And earlier we heard from Ato Forson, who's the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. Away from Parliament, the Minister for Food and Agric, Eric Opoku, has announced that government is investing in the development of an improved tomato variety aimed at significantly boosting local production and reducing Ghana's reliance on imports. According to the minister, resources have been allocated to the West Africa Center for crop improvement to develop a variety expected to yield over 20 tons per hectare. A move he says is critical to addressing Ghana's estimated 300,000 ton deficit in tomato production. Eric Opoku made the disclosure while responding to a statement on the floor of Parliament. But first, the NPP MP for Ofinsun North, Dr. Fred Asamoah, who made a statement on the issue, is demanding urgent government intervention to bridge the gap created by the ban on tomato import from Burkina Faso.
I therefore call on government and relevant stakeholders to accelerate the expansion of Akmadine irrigation scheme, scale up modern technologies such as drip irrigation, and continue investment by the previous government in the rehabilitation of existing systems, integration of irrigation with storage and processing facilities, support for farmers through credit, inputs and extension services, and improvement of feeder routes to link farms to market efficiently. Mr. Speaker, the people of Ofinsun North constituency and Ghana are not asking for charity. They are asking for opportunity. With the right investment, Ofinsun North constituency can meet Ghana's tomato demand year-round, eliminate the need for risky cross-border sourcing, stabilize prices for consumers, create employment across the agricultural value chain. Mr. Speaker, the rising tomato prices, the heavy post-harvest losses, and the tragic loss of life of Ghanaian traders all point to one clear conclusion. Ghana must invest heavily in irrigation-driven agricultural systems to support all year-round farming, and the people of Ofinsun North constituency stands ready.
In his response, the Food and Agric Minister assured Parliament that government is on top of the issue, outlining plans to boost local production and safeguard the country's food security.
Of approximately 300,000 metric tons to close before we can attain sufficiency in tomato production in Ghana. But we have to understand, we have to have a better appreciation of the challenge, the root cause of it, before we can prefer the appropriate solution to deal with it. While our counterparts in Burkina Faso are doing 18 tons per hectare, we are doing 8 tons. So what is the problem? The problem is the seed, the variety that is used in the production of tomatoes. And so we have decided, and this morning we had a meeting with Waki of Legon and some of the research institutions, and they have given us the assurance that they can give us a variety that can give us more than 20 tons per hectare. Yeah. More than 20 tons per hectare. So we are asking, we are committing them, we have made some resources available to ensure that we develop that variety to bring a lasting solution to the problem.
And happening now in New York is President John Mahama, who is tabling a historic African Union-backed draft resolution on the African nations, or United Nations, I beg your pardon, seeking to have the UN recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. There he is. Let's listen to him.
Our global community gathered here, just as we have done today, and resolved to designate the 25th of March of the following year a day of remembrance. It marked significant progress. Then the following year, in 2007, we decided to make the event an annual one so that the 25th March of every year would be the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. That marked an additional step in our forward motion. And so it's indeed fortuitous to be here today, 2 decades later, addressing the General Assembly on behalf of the African Group regarding the draft resolution entitled Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. In September last year, at the 80th session of the General Assembly, I stood in this exact place and served notice that Ghana will move a motion to declare the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. This current draft resolution is a result of months of consultation and consensus building by continental bodies, nations, experts, scholars, and jurists, with the sole aim of achieving a united front and grounding the final outcome in truth, compassion, and moral conscience, remembrance, education, and dialogue. So today we come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice. The adoption of this resolution serves as a safeguard against forgetting. It also challenges the enduring scars of slavery. Madam President, let me conclude with two significant quotes by two great leaders of history, one of them white and one of them black. The former President of the United States of America, Theodore Roosevelt, said, and I quote, "With a great moral issue involved, neutrality does not serve righteousness. For to be neutral between right and wrong is to serve wrong." Again, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King also reminds us, and I quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We've traveled this long road, each step guided by a desire to be better and to do better, each step bringing us closer to the kind of world we would want to leave for our children. And so, delegates, on this beautiful day in March, we're called to stand on the right side of history. Let it be recorded that when history beckoned, we did what was right, for the memory of the millions who suffered the indignity of the slave trade and those who continue to suffer racial discrimination. Let our vote on this resolution restore their dignity and humanity. I thank you for the opportunity.
I thank the President of the Republic of Ghana on behalf of the African states. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lebanon, who will speak on behalf of the Asia-Pacific states.
So that is President John Mahama at the United Nations General Assembly, where he's seeking for the UN to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. Let's get talking, and joining me on Zoom is Professor Obadele Kambun of the University of Ghana. He is very passionate about this subject. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Tell us about your life story and how relevant it is to this subject of transatlantic slave trade and reparations. Kindly unmute your microphone so we can hear you. Hello, can you hear me? We're still trying to establish a connection to Professor Obadele Kambun of the University of Ghana. He's very passionate about this subject on transatlantic slave trade, as I mentioned earlier. Welcome to the program. I can see you now. Tell us about your life story, really, and how relevant it is to this subject of transatlantic slave trade and reparations. Do we have connection to Professor Kamdun?
Can you hear me well?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I was saying that I've been following the discussion at the UN with regard to
We're still trying to establish a connection with him there. He's a professor at the University of Ghana, an African-American who is now a naturalized Ghanaian. So this story about transatlantic slave trade is dear to his heart, as I mentioned earlier. Let's try and reestablish connection with him one more time. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Much better. You were making a point.
Yeah, so I've been following the discussions about the establishment of the transatlantic enslavement, the vote on that at the UN. And, you know, while we can definitely regard the transatlantic enslavement as the greatest crime in the history of humanity, one thing that I find puzzling, however, is the reason why it may have been divorced in some way, shape, or form from the trans-Saharan enslavement of Black people as well. Because with that, you can look at the Sidi people who were taken to what is now modern-day India, coming from the eastern coast of the continent, and this goes back to 628 CE. You can look at even prior to that. You can look at even the enslavement of the people of classical Kemet by the Hyksos, and that dates to around 1550 BCE. Or you can come more recent and you look at the Zanj Rebellion. This is the first known rebellion of enslaved Black people in the diaspora, and it's the Eastern diaspora, and that one is taking us into 869 to 883 CE. And when we look comprehensively, you know, if we're looking at the transatlantic, aspect of enslavement, that takes us to 1441 CE, with the Portuguese coming and raiding along the coast, Antal Gonçalves and Nuno Tristão, under the behest of Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal, who intentionally came and captured Black people. They were later joined by Lancelot de Freitas and others to capture over 200 people. And then this is the start of transatlantic enslavement. But again, if we look, collectively, this is much more than just transatlantic enslavement, because this is ongoing. When we look at the Arabs in these so-called northern African countries, like Libya, some years ago, there was a video on BBC where it was showing Black people who are being quote unquote sold on an auction in Libya, and there were actually protests, in front of the Libyan embassy. And when I saw that, I said, these people don't know what they're doing, because they also need to protest in front of the Morocco embassy, and also in front of the Tunisian embassy, and also in front of the Egyptian embassy and the Sudanese embassy, and all of these North African countries, because across the board, Black people are still being enslaved, to the point where when Morocco joined the AU in 2016, they had about 250,000 Black people enslaved, according to Global Slavery Index. So when we look at this, when we're looking at transatlantic, the question that puzzles me is why we would separate that from trans-Saharan, Indian Ocean, because those are actually the predecessors of the transatlantic one, and those are still ongoing. Like I said, as of 2016, I was looking at the data because I was comparing when Haiti applied to join the African Union, and they were told that according to 29.1 of the AU's Constitutive Act, only African countries, meaning those that are on the continent, can be members of the AU. Meanwhile, Haiti, that is much more Black and African, if that means anything whatsoever, than these countries that have been overrun by Arabs. And the point that I'm driving at is that we even know the dates on which the Arabs came into, this land that we now refer to as Africa. We know when they started the conquest, 639 CE under the Caliph Umar. We know in 652, this is when they had the Bach Treaty with Nubia, where they actually forced people to conscript other black people as a tribute. And they said, okay, because you've been conquered, now you have to give us tribute in human beings. So this is, again, 652 CE. All of this predates 1441 in terms of the transatlantic enslavement of black people. So it's definitely part of a much wider crime against humanity. And I would say it's the latter-day crime against humanity. And that one is still ongoing as well, because if you look at the U.S., according to the 13th Amendment of the U.S., it says slavery shall not exist within the U.S. or any place subject to their jurisdiction, except whereas the party has been duly convicted of a crime.
Right.
That caveat is how they were able to keep enslaving people through convict leasing, keep enslaving people through nowadays privatized prisons in the prison industrial complex. They intentionally put that into the 13th Amendment so that they could keep getting free labor from black people, and that's what exists to this day.
Right. Don't go yet. Let me bring in Kwejo Appiah-Etua. He's a professor of law at the University of Ghana. Professor Appiah-Etua, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. The demand for the recognition of transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity at the United Nations actually has some legal twists and turns to it, whether it passes or not. Tell us about it.
Thanks for having me. Yes, there is definitely a legal dimension to the whole slavery question and the reparations that President is demanding. When we look at the whole slavery issue, when it comes to reparations, they generally look at it from a moral point of view, that we can make a moral claim, but we cannot make a legal claim for slavery. But that is unfounded. There's a legal claim for slavery because at the time that the whole process started, slavery was illegal under international law. There's a principle in international law called the jus cogens norms, which is a peremptory norm of international law. That is the highest form of international law principle. And at the time that the slavery was in place, the transatlantic slavery I'm talking about, the jus cogens principle had sought to delegitimize slavery as a practice. Moreover, in international law, there's a principle we call the persistent objector. When customary international law is emerging, states that take part in it in terms of state practice, with the backed by what we call the use the state practice and opinio juris. That is the legality attached to the state practice. That is what the two come together to consider what we call customary international law. And it's only, this customary international law only applies to states that take part in the practice.
Right.
And the historical facts clearly indicate that a number of these African empires and kingdoms at the time objected to the practice. Some even wrote letters to some of the European countries against the negative impact of the practice on their citizens, on their demography, and so on. So to me, that makes a strong case that international law did not legalize slave trade at the time. But then those countries that were benefiting from them, the European countries, sought to change the face of international law to make slavery legal. And so at a point in time in the history of international law, slavery was recognized as a legal practice. But this was based on customary practice. It wasn't based on a treaty law, for example, that there was a treaty that legalized slavery, except among the European countries at the time. And again, when we talk about treaties, if you don't sign and you don't ratify, you are not a party to that treaty. And at that time, African states, empires, and kingdoms had also been reduced to the status of not having sovereignty, and therefore they couldn't sign these treaties and to be part of it, even if they had wanted to. Okay, so on that basis, we can make a strong case that slavery, as a transatlantic slave trade at that time, was not legal. And therefore, if you are making claims for reparations, it shouldn't be based on moral arguments. It should be based on legal arguments that it was wrong. And if it was wrong 400 years ago and so on, it is still wrong today, because we are talking about slavery falling into the realm of international crimes against humanity. Yes, so there's no expiry date on when we can make claims.
Right.
Now, coming down to whether we can make the claims today, in principle, yes, as I said, we can argue on grounds of international law. But the process that we have now, going through the UN system, unfortunately, in my opinion, is not going to yield any results. Because it's not the first time that Africa has attempted that, and it's not the second time. And even in 2001, there was a UN conference held in Durban, South Africa, which sought to came to a similar conclusion that slavery should be considered as a crime against humanity. Okay, and there is a beautiful document on that, but unfortunately, that has remained as a UN declaration, which is not binding, and therefore you cannot use it to make claims legally for the crimes that were committed in the past.
Right. Professor Appiah-Jatu, I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Professor Kambon in once again. You, as I mentioned earlier, are very passionate about this particular subject. There are concerns that no matter how it goes, whether the UN adopts or rejects this resolution, it will be a historic milestone. Do you share in that sentiment?
Well, Prof. Appiah-Jatu, actually a colleague of mine, we worked on various things together. I share a similar sentiment. There's a proverb that they use in the Caribbean where they say, in a court of fowls, a cockroach never gets justice. And that is to say the UN includes those that in the past were enslaving Black people and to date are still enslaving Black people. And that, includes the Arab states and what's now known as North Africa that I mentioned before. That also includes the US, which, as I mentioned before, according to the 13th Amendment, slavery shall not exist except where they've convicted a person of a crime. That includes, all of these other beneficiaries of ill-gotten gains who are still, gaining, through the continued enslavement of Black people or the past enslavement of Black people. So, according to Baba Omowale Malcolm X, there were these notorious criminals in the U.S. called Frank James and Jesse James. And he said that, to ask one to adjudicate on another is a futile effort because both of them are armed robbers. So if you ask one to say something against the other one, it implies his own guilt thereof. So, I think that just symbolically that there's something to be done there, but also there's a precedent for this as well. There's a very good book by Professor Nafafe, where Jose Linyan Nafafe, that goes into Lorenzo da Silva Mendoza and the Black abolitionist movement of the 17th century, where 1684 to 1686, a lot of people don't know this, he actually took a court case to the Vatican because the Vatican is, through the papal bulls, they are the ones who actually said that slavery shall exist in perpetuity, perpetual enslavement. That was basically a new idea that these people, meaning Black people, and their children forever and ever would be enslaved. And again, that was the papal bull Dum Diversis, and then also Romanus Pontifex. So he said, well, because this is the religious justification of enslavement, let me actually take the court case to there. He actually won the court case where some people were able to be brought back to Angola from Brazil. However, as we know, in 1686, that didn't end enslavement altogether. Most people don't even know that it was going on that far back. So, these are precedents that we can look at in terms of law, in terms of international law, in terms of cases that have been brought to the UN. Nana Paul Robeson and others brought this case, We Charge Genocide, again, trying to come to the UN. But I feel like because you have all of these people who are victims of enslavement, as well as all of those who are perpetrators of enslavement in the same body, then it becomes almost a contradiction in terms beyond the symbolic nature of things.
You teach African studies at the University of Ghana. How might this resolution influence the global teaching of the effects of transatlantic slave trade on Africans?
Well, I think it'll cause people to do more of what they do now, which is focus on transatlantic to the detriment of looking at trans-Saharan. And I feel like that's a major problem. So transatlantic, if we're going to cut off one aspect of the greatest crime in humanity, let's say someone, kicked in your door, burned it, burned down your house, killed all your family members, and say the burning is the only part that's the greatest crime against humanity. And it's like, well, what about killing all my family members? What about coming in and robbing me? What about all these other things that were going on? Because again, this is an entire complex. And I feel like part of the issue is we're focused on so-called Europeans as opposed to focusing on all of these Eurasians who have been enslaving black people, going back millennia. So if we look at it comprehensively, we'll look at the role of the Arabs, we'll look at the role of the Indo-Aryans and what's now called India. We'll look at the role of the so-called Europeans, all Eurasians put together, and what they have been doing and continue to do, with black people. Right. Again, I think to answer your question directly, it will cause people to focus on the transatlantic portion of it as opposed to look at it comprehensively. As we used to do in classical Kemet, we refer to all these people from the continent of Eurasia as Amu. So whether they came from the peninsula that we now call Europe, whether they came from what's now known as Syria, whether it's what they now call Lebanon, wherever they came from, we had a blanket term to refer to all of these non-black invaders and foreigners, and it was Amu, and literally it translates to foreigners. I feel like once we get back to an understanding from our own perspective in our own languages, it will help us understand the comprehensive nature of enslavement, not just the Western Eurasians, but across the entire continent of Eurasia, including what we now know as Europe, including what we now know as Asia, as the invaders, imperialists, enslavers of black people comprehensively. And I feel like part of it is that we don't want to step on the toes of the Arabs who are still enslaving black people and who are still on stolen land and are actually part of another body called the AU to the detriment of Haiti that cannot be a full member, but Morocco and other enslavers can still be full members. Right. These are major problems.
Obadele Kambun is an associate professor at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. We appreciate you giving us the benefit of your expertise. And I still have Professor Kojo Appiagyei-Tua, who is also at the University of Ghana. Professor, already we're hearing that the European Union and other European powers say that they will object to this resolution, really. And our demand for reparations, does it mean that it's in jeopardy, really? What happens to it if they vote against it? Can we take it to the ICC, ICJ? Where?
Well, within the international human rights and the UN system, there are certain processes and procedures and certain organs and institutions that, depend on where the matter is being discussed or addressed, it will determine the extent of the legality that could be attached to that resolution being passed there or not. And so what is happening now is within the General Assembly level. And traditionally, that should have been the most democratic institution or organ of the UN. Because that is where each country has one vote. But unfortunately, within the General Assembly, the decisions that are taken, the declarations and the resolutions that are passed there are not binding, legally binding. They are only advisory or recommendatory. So what is going on there, at the end of the day, even if it gets overwhelming support of votes, which is likely to be the case, the question is, who are those who would abstain or who would vote against? At the end of the day, is the majority. It's not about the majority that vote for, but it is those who hold hegemonic influence in international relations, who, when they vote against, are able to collapse the application of this particular resolution that will be passed. And that has happened before. And so in the 70s, we talked about a new international economic order, which was another means to redress past injustices through the slave trade and colonialism and many other attempts have been made. But most of these resolutions which were passed remain only of academic interest because the big powers voted against it. And so this, what our president is doing, is not something that is the first thing that is being done. And I'm not surprised by that the former colonial authorities would say they will vote against it. So when they vote against it, that means that it is just going to be shelved. It's going to be debated in academic circles and the classrooms and so on. But in reality and in practice, it is not going to make much impact on the ground.
Right. Kujo Appiah-Tuah is a professor of law at the University of Ghana. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. You're still watching the polls here on JoyNews. When we return from the break, we have more stories for you. You're welcome back. JoyNews, through the Impact Makers Foundation, is rolling out a nationwide series of citizen dialogues to address the growing influence of money in Ghana's politics. The initiative, dubbed Democracy is Not for Sale, begins this Friday in Tamale, where a regional forum will bring together citizens, political actors, and key institutions to examine how vote buying and campaign financing are shaping democratic outcomes. Ahead of the engagement, a JoyNews research team has been on the ground in the northern region, interacting with residents and gathering data to reflect citizen perspectives on money in politics. And joining me live from Tamale is the host of the forum, Faustina Safo. Faustina, what are we to expect on Friday? And really, from now till Friday, what is happening?
Hi, Kenneth. I'm glad to come to you live from Tamale. Honestly, the sun is scorching. My God, the heat here is amazing. But we're here because of you. Yes, you, the citizens. And the purpose of this conversation we're having here at the Nat Hall at Tamale on the 27th of this month is all about how we can ensure that our electoral process and our democracy is not sold off to individuals who have the financial muscle. Well, let me tell you where I am. I'm at the Nat Hall where it's all going down on the 27th, and it's a good time for me to take you around and tell you how preparations are ongoing. This is the hall at Tamale. Over 300 people will be here tomorrow just to have a conversation with us. We have key stakeholders, political party representatives, as well as citizens. In fact, our research team, they've been on the ground for days now, just soliciting opinions of citizens right here in Tamale. They've been to the markets, they've been to lorry station, they've been to schools, and they're just trying to get people's opinion about illicit financial flows, political financing, and vote buying. They tell us that indeed individuals admit that there's vote buying and it's fast penetrating our political space. But the only concern they have is that the harsh economic condition makes it difficult for them to turn away from some of these juicy offers. You have watched the media space in a while. Some delegates walked away with television sets and motorbikes not too long ago. And so this conversation is imperative because we want to ensure that we're sustaining the gains after democracy that we are enjoying in this country. And just next to me is Martina Bugri. She's our Northern Regional Correspondent. She's been doing all the hard work here, getting the venue. We'll take you inside shortly just to show you how preparations are underway. But she's been doing all the work, making sure we have a place to sleep. Martina, you've been on the ground doing lots of hard work. What should we expect?
What we are expecting is a very beautiful show. People are anticipating, they are looking forward to this particular day, and I'm happy that the day is just 2 days away from here. People are concerned about issues of vote buying, and so I believe a lot of people will show up. I mean, invites have been sent, they have confirmed they are coming, and so yes, we are looking forward to a beautiful show that will tell the story of vote buying and how we can address this canker that's largely creeping into our political space and which has a very big impact going forward. And so, yes, we are looking forward to a very wonderful time.
And we know that you've been actively helping with booking the guests for the conversation, both the political actors, stakeholders, and even individuals that will be present here tomorrow. Who should we expect?
So we are expecting the political parties, all the political parties. We sent invite to them, and we are expecting the police as well. We are expecting youth groups, including everybody inclusive. We have the people coming from the disability community, we have women coming, we have youth coming, and in the youth category we have a younger generation. So we have those below 15, and then we have those above 18. And so we have a large composition of very, should I say, a group that would actually tell the story that we want to send out.
And why is it important for us to have this conversation, especially in Tamale? You live here, and why is it imperative?
It's very important because, look, since people spend a lot of money when it comes to political activities, where do they get the money from? And so if I spend money, obviously I need to recoup what I have spent. Nobody spends for free. And so if people are spending, definitely they are going to, and where are they going to get the money from? From the state institutions that they would run. And when that happens, what happens to the development that we are asking for? Obviously, the 10% cuts, the shoddy works that we see, among others. And so it's very important, very crucial at this time that we are looking forward to, as the NDC is saying, resetting a new Ghana.
Thank you so much, Martina. And our research team, I told you, they've been on the ground soliciting opinions from individuals in market spaces. They've been to schools. They're just trying to ensure that we don't have this conversation in a vacuum. We want data that we can work with. But let me take you into Nat Hall. I told you I'll be taking you inside the hall shortly. But just before we go in, I can see MFR here. MFR, come. MFR is the project lead for Democracy is Not for Sale. You can see how stressed she is. It's all because of you, because she wants to ensure that on the 27th, when we come to you live from the Nat Hall, everything is excellently done. We've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. MFR, why is this conversation even imperative at this time?
I think you've said it all. In every election season, you see the scenes of people sharing cash, people dashing gifts, and you ask yourself, where is the source of financing all of these things? Oftentimes, we only talk about them in our closets, wherever you are watching the scenes from, and then you leave it there. But of course, as journalists, you don't want to leave it there. We are to always keep probing the issues, and that is why we are taking this initiative. We do not want to end the conversation in our bedrooms, in our offices, on the streets, in the drinking bars. We want to drum it to that extent that you hear we get the state actors to do what is necessary. At the end of the day, it is about protecting our democratic process. The leaders that we have, are we proud of ourselves if we look back at what went into the decision we made in putting them in power? So that is what the Democracy is Not for Sale is all about. We want to keep the conversation going. More importantly, is to get state actors to say that enough is enough. We don't want to be seeing and just talking about these things anymore. We want action. We want it to stop. And you and I have the charge to keep hitting their backs until the right thing is done, or how we want our democracy to look like. We get that picture. That is why we are here.
And would this be one-off thing? Should we expect you to go to other regions?
Not at all. So we are going to be in 10 regions, and Tamale is the premier location. From here, we'll be visiting the Upper East region. We'll be going to Oti region. We'll be going to Volta. We'll be in the Eastern. We'll be in the Western region, Central region, Ashanti region, and quite a few other regions. As much as possible, we want a regional feel of the conversation. We do not want to leave it just at the maybe southern sector or just the north, but we want a comprehensive participation from all stakeholders. As long as Ghana's democratic process is of concern to you, we want you to be part of this conversation. And so we are not leaving the conversation in just one or two regions. We want to try as much as possible to be in at least 10 of the 16 regions. And we hope that in doing so, we can get the views that we need to be able to push this agenda that we are on.
And I'll come to you to find out the end goal, because that's imperative. But let's look at the number of people we're expecting here, the different political divides we're expecting coming 27th.
So yes, I mentioned, so long as you are interested in the country's democratic process, automatically you are part of this conversation. So on Friday, everybody talk about the people involved, talk about electorates, the political parties, CSOs, development partners, anyone who has the heart of Ghana, who has the politics of Ghana at heart. We are hoping to attract these people into this. Or you can come with me. You can see how large the space is, all in the bid to get everybody here so that we can have a very inclusive conversation. It is not limited to a few, as many as can join us. So this space here can accommodate nothing less than 500 people. And so we are inviting everybody. If you can join us, come be here Friday, 4 p.m. at the Nat Hall, Tamale, for that conversation.
And let's look at the kind of thoughts we have been soliciting, because I know that our research team, they've been on the ground. So far, do we know some of the responses they have gotten and how this will impact the upcoming forum?
Okay, it's early days yet, so I'm sure the research team would provide us with the outcome of the study they are conducting. Essentially, that is what they are doing. And it will also inform our conversation on Friday. So not to want to let out the cat or put out everything so quickly, let's allow them to finish the exercise. I know they've been in so many places. They've been at the market centers. They've been at some health facilities and selected offices. We are yet to know what exactly the respondents are telling them, and that will set the agenda for Friday's conversation. But obviously, these are things on the heart of the Ghanaian electorate, and I'm sure there'll be real issues. Probably a few things that you and I have discussed in our closed session or even in the newsroom. So I'm hoping to see some of these issues, and then we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
And finally, how can they be a part of it?
In financing Ghana's politics and campaigns, you want to take that advantage and engage them directly. You don't want to watch them or listen to them on TV, on radio. Watch them on TV or listen to them on radio. So we invite you, so long as you are in Tamale, close to the Nat Hall, come, be here, be on ground, so you can participate. And yourself, you are going to be hosting us. And we trust you give us a great conversation on the day.
Thank you so much, MFI. And you can see how sweaty she is, because really the place is hot, even with air conditions all around. And that's what we're taking into consideration with this upcoming town hall forum. We're making sure that you're comfortable. So we've put on the air conditions just for you, yes, our audience. And I'm taking you up to the podium because I can't wait for Friday. I would be doing you the honors of starting the conversation. And so this is where I'll be coming to you live from, right here. We'll be doing our decor. You'd have our JoyNews logo here. I'm sure I'll be wearing my heels, so I'll have more height to see you, our audience. And of course, our special guests, they will be here as well. They'll be occupying the front rows, and all our political actors as well as key stakeholders as well. They'll be here as well, joining us for the JoyNews Impact Makers Democracy is Not for Sale Town Hall Forum happening live here at Tamale. And so we're on the ground. We're making sure that everything is set. Over to you, Kenneth.
Right.
In the studio.
Right, Faustina, I see you talking about the weather. I can really relate to the weather in Tamale because I've lived there for a number of years. This probably is your first time. But let's talk about the food. Have you had some TZ to eat since you've been there?
Oh my God, Kenneth, in fact, well, if there is any chance I could be darker than I already am, it will be because I'm in Tamale. But hopefully, KOP and Evans will send me some sunscreen to help with my color. But then the place is hot. In fact, that's the best way to describe it. But so far, I haven't tried TZ yet. I have tried Wache. And so far, I can rate the Wache compared to Accra Wache. It will be like 7/10. Yes. But my crew tells me that they have to take me to a better Wache joint. So I'm hoping that that will help solve the problem, Kenneth.
Definitely, Forsina Safo, thank you very much, and you certainly do not want to miss that dialogue happening on Friday, the 27th of March in Tamale. Let's still stay in Tamale because we have our ears and eyes on the ground. Anthony Menu and Caleb Ziblame of our research desk are also around. Let me begin with you, Anthony. From your field work in Tamale, what stands out most about how citizens perceive vote buying from the surveys you've been conducting since you've been there?
Yeah, Ken, over the last couple of days that we've actually been here, we've spoken to nearly 200 people here in the capital of the northern region, Tamale. And what the people are saying is that, yes, they know about vote buying. Over 50% of the people that we have spoken to are saying that, yes, they have personally, seen politicians give out money to people in order to influence their vote, while others are saying that they have personally not seen it, but they have heard, media report actually, talking about this particular vote buying in the political system. With regards to the laws here in Ghana, people are saying that, yes, there are laws that exist here in Ghana, but they are on paper. They are not actually reflecting what is actually on ground. So the people are saying that the laws here in Ghana are definitely not working here. So that is the general perception that the people are actually giving with respect to the democracy not for sale survey that we are actually working on.
And were there any surprising or concerning patterns that you found out?
Yes. Yes, interestingly, we saw a disparity between the views from the older people as well as the younger people. Whereas both groups are actually admitting that vote buying exists, the youth are saying that looking at the current political system, it has been shaped in the sense that if you don't have money, it will be difficult to stand for a position. And they believe that they would rather vote for people who have money and are willing to give to them. And the reason they are actually giving is that if they vote for those without money but have ideas, there's a perception that other people may vote for the people with money. And they actually don't want their vote to actually go waste. So they would rather vote for those who have money. Other views that they are also sharing is that those with ideas and has less money, when they come into power, they will have, this idea at the back of their mind that they are going to, get the monies for themselves. But for the older people, they are actually worried about their children. They are worried about the future youth. They are saying that if this vote buying system continues to exist, it will make it difficult for their children to also, stand for positions in the future. They are worried that they that don't come from money, and then if this system persists, it means that their children will need to have money, and then they may not be able to, pursue the political, view that they actually want to achieve. So I wouldn't want to, give you all the details here, because on Friday we will be giving some, extra interesting details here, Ken.
Anthony Menu is a member of our research desk here at JoyNews. Another member of our research desk, Caleb Ziblame, is also in Tamale. Caleb, how representative would you say the views of the people in Tamale is with aligning with the national sentiment?
So we've spoken with a number of people, like my colleague Anthony said, we've spoken with over 200 people already. And then the majority of the people are from, we've spoken to some market women, we've spoken to some informal traders, we've spoken to some business owners, we've also spoken to some workers of in the formal sector. So we've really spoken to a number of people, and then we believe that the people we've spoken to so far represent majority of people in the northern region, if not the entire Ghana. But then again, we are still getting more responses. And at the end of the day, is to generate a report that represents the majority of the people in the northern region. As we go along this project, we'll see that different regions have different problems and different way they see things. So what we get from the northern region might not necessarily follow what we get in, say, the Ashanti or the western regions. However, we are looking for a holistic picture. And at the end of the day, we will surely see some similarities across all regions. But then we are trying our best to make sure that this is a very representative population we are speaking to.
And in what ways will your findings shape the tone and direction of discussions at the forum?
Yeah, so our analysis and then the report that we are going to submit is going to be the base for the conversation. Because usually whenever we have conversations like this, we usually just put an expert in the studio and then have discussions with the experts. But then sometimes we forget that the reality is always nuanced, and then it evolves all the time. Sometimes the notion or the analysis that we have going into conversations change every second, every minute. So without continuous engagements with people on the ground to understand their realities and then how their realities have changed over time, we will not have a holistic or a more informed conversation at the end of the day. So our work here is to make sure that we are speaking to the people, understanding things from their point of view, and then when we get the answers from them, when we get their concerns and then their proposals, we lay this at the feet of the citizens or the other members of the public in the northern region, along with the MPs and the political leaders and opinion leaders in the region, so that we come and tell them that this is what the people in the northern region are saying. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that democracy is for the people. We determine how we want our country to be governed. So if this is what the people are saying, then, and if it's majority of the people, it means that something needs to be done about it again.
Caleb Ziblim, thank you very much. He's also a member of our research desk. We've been hearing from Faustina Safo, who will be hosting that particular forum. We've also heard from Emefa Eli, who is a project lead here at JoyNews. We've heard from our Northern Regional Correspondent, Martina Bugri. We've heard from Anthony Menu, who is also a member of the JoyNews research desk. So if I say that we have our ears and eyes on the ground in Tamale, I mean it. You definitely do not want to miss that particular forum on Friday, the 27th of March at 4 p.m. exactly, coming to you live from the Nat Hall in Tamale. You're still watching the polls here on JoyNews. Return from the break with more. You're welcome back. As temperatures rise across Ghana, a silent crisis is unfolding in many classrooms. In parts of the Greater Accra region, pupils are trying to learn in extremely hot conditions where metal roofs and poor ventilation trap the heat, turning classrooms into ovens. Teachers say concentration drops, headaches become common, and some children struggle to stay through the school day. In our climate evidence series today, Seyram Ablad de Souza looks at how rising temperatures and poorly designed classroom buildings are affecting pupils' health and the ability to learn.
Accra, experts say, is getting hotter. But for thousands of school children across the region, the heat is not just outside. It is trapped inside their classrooms.
Because of the roofing sheet, the heat that comes, it is unbearable.
By mid-morning, the temperatures inside many classrooms begin to climb. Metal roofing sheets absorb the sun's heat. Windows made of decorative blocks restrict airflow. The results, classrooms that feel more like ovens than learning spaces.
In our classroom, we sweat when the sun is hot. And when the fan is blowing, it does not bring plenty air. So everybody will be sweating from the sun.
But what does the research say about aluminum roofing sheets and decorative blocks? Professor Ebenezer Amankwa is Senior Lecturer, Department of Geography, University of Ghana, and has researched the impact of roofing materials on schools in tropical Africa.
Students studying under classrooms with metal roofs tend to experience 6 degrees more temperature than those in the classrooms with concrete roof. Concrete rooms tend to have temperatures of about 28, less than 30 degrees, about 28 thereabout, whereas metal roofs classrooms have temperatures above 30 degrees, on the average about 33, 35 degrees, but some were as high as over 40 degrees.
So, how about the window style?
Surprisingly, we realized that most of the government schools are now changing their window types from the operable windows, where we have sometimes the wooden or the louvers, the usual ones that we have in our homes, to the design blocks, which was a bit surprising because it also limits ventilation.
As the sun intensifies, concentration begins to fade.
From 12 going to 1, we didn't concentrate. Some people tried to fall out because of the heat.
We feel it. When our madam is teaching us, we cannot concentrate on our madam.
When we went to break, when we come, we feel it in the classroom. And so some people open their dress. So now, like, they don't feel it. And so me, I open my dress now, but I can't feel it in the classroom.
The teachers say some pupils complain of headaches, others develop heat rashes from constant sweating, as well as fatigue and dehydration.
They feel restlessness when the teacher is teaching. They don't pay attention just because they also feel warm. So whatever a teacher is doing, they don't understand it at all. Just because they concentrate on the heat, leaving the teaching aspect.
For many parents, the stories are familiar. Their children return home soaked in sweat, complaining of dizziness and exhaustion. Metal roofing without insulation can significantly increase indoor temperatures. Professor Amankwa says in some cases, classrooms can be several degrees hotter than outside environment.
And the ambient conditions within the school environment counts. And in a lot of the low-income areas, we tend to have a lot of activities happening around the school environment. So yes, a public school and a private school will be experiencing similar temperatures, but school children will experience variations in their heat experiences because the classroom conditions may be different. The ambient conditions around the classroom may be different.
Extreme heat inside classrooms does more than cause discomfort. It directly affects a child's ability to learn. Over time, these conditions ultimately affect academic performance.
There's literature that supports the positive correlation between increased temperatures and cognitive performance and even impairment or even development. So once school children for a very long time are exposed to prolonged temperatures, then it's believed that it can have those impacts on their cognitive performance and even development. The heat affects your attention span. It brings fatigue. It brings stress. It brings sometimes even dizziness and headache. And all of these contribute to how your brain is able to function, which is your cognitive performance.
Data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency indicates that temperatures in Ghana keeps rising steadily. Dr. Eric Isuman, Director General, Ghana Meteorological Agency, warns that extreme heat days are becoming more frequent.
We've done analysis over the years, and we can see the trend of increasing in temperatures. And so it is it's very true that temperatures are gradually increasing. In fact, 0.001 increase in temperature have an effect.
Scientists say without urgent adaptation measures, the impact could intensify. So, until aging structures can be redesigned or rebuilt, what immediate steps can be taken to reduce the heat burden? Professor Ebenezer Amankwa provides some structural and non-structural solutions.
I would have gone for the roofing, but I know that is expensive, putting up or renovating to concrete roofs. But with the time and limited budget, I think we can do insulation of the classrooms. That is a low-hanging fruit. Okay, once you insulate the classroom roofing, then it limits the direct penetration of the sun into the classroom. So the ceiling sort of traps the heat in a way and reduces the impact. And that is something that we can easily do. Then secondly, if we can redesign the windows, because that is also very useful for ventilation. And then three, let's encourage greenery in our school environment. Let's encourage the planting of trees and flowers and other plants in our school environment.
As the school day ends, pupils rush outside in search of cooler air. But tomorrow morning, they will return to these same classrooms. And as temperatures continue to rise, experts say protecting children from extreme heat must begin with redesigning the spaces where they learn, because education cannot thrive in an oven. For JoyNews, I am Sayram Abla de Souza.
The Ghana Water Limited says deteriorating raw water sources largely due to illegal mining measures are making conventional treatment methods increasingly ineffective. Water Quality Assurance Manager for Ghana Water Limited, Moses Pencil, explains that the traditional use of aluminium sulfate, commonly known as alum, is no longer sufficient to clarify heavily polluted water. To manage the challenge, newer treatment facilities are adapting the off-river reservoir system, a process that stores raw water for up to 3 months, allowing sediments and pollutants to settle naturally before treatment. But even that is not always enough due to the cost implications.
When the raw water deteriorates beyond a certain threshold, we are unable to actually produce or treat water with those treatment plants, and therefore we would have to wait for the water quality to improve before we abstract our required quantities to the treatment plant for treatment and then to the supply network. But in newly designed water treatment plants, we are adapting the use of the off-river reservoir concept, whereby we create diversion channels and then create dams, sometimes with detention or retention times of 2 to 3 months, whereby we hold the water for this period for all the settlable solids and all the colloidal substances to actually settle within the 2 or 3 months holding or retention time. Then the supernatant that is on top is actually what is abstracted and sent to the treatment plants for treatment. Now, this concept is also quite expensive, but aside the fact that you would have a supernatant that is relatively cleaner, you still sometimes need to use the polymer to treat the water, and this is what makes water treatment with in the Galamsey affected systems very difficult and complex to handle.
Well, the company is also rallying the support of Ghanaians in the conservation of water. Dr. Richard Apia-Otu is Greater Accra Regional Manager of the company.
Important. Anywhere there are certain things they are supposed to recognize. The value of water, that conservation is important. So every tap that is leaking, they should try and make sure that it's closed. When they see anything bad, illegal connection in the society, they should report it, because water that is stolen is a legitimate water that is denied somebody who's paying for water supply. And then dreaming big about learning so much about water science, water engineering, so that they can be part of the people who will help us to advance the course of water supply and water management in this country. So that's what today is about.
In other stories this evening, the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority and the National Road Safety Authority have begun a nationwide clampdown on vehicles operating as commercial transport despite being registered for private use. The exercise targets vehicles such as the Toyota Voxy and similar models that are increasingly being used to transport passengers for a fee without the appropriate commercial licensing. According to the two institutions, the operation forms part of efforts to enforce road traffic regulations and improve passenger safety on Guinean roads. My colleague Nana Bwashi Adam has more.
It looks as if the Toyota Voxy vehicle has been involved in the commercial activities, a lot of commercial transport activities these days, but majority of them are being registered as private vehicles, and so a nationwide or a regional clampdown, I must say, is happening in the Ashanti region, particularly on the Kumasi-Accra highway, and that is where we are currently, where some few vehicles you see have been arrested. Earlier on, we saw a number of them being arrested, and then they sent out caution to some of them. We are being told that as at now, they are not going to be proceeded to court, but then the DVLA is going to send some form of caution. They are going to take their details, and also they are going to invite them to their offices. But the particular vehicles, Voxy vehicles you see here, two of them, in fact three, because I can see another one being stopped right behind us or from our far end over here, and the two in your front that you see right now, we are being told that they are coming from the port without any form of identification, no DP, no DV, nothing at all. We're even being told that the driver who owns this car particularly has no license, and so this exercise is going to be one that is going to focus on some of these key areas for DVLA and then the National Road Safety Authority. But let's speak to the regional manager for the DVLA, Jerry, and also see if we can speak to the National Road Safety Authority. Let's first speak to the National Road Safety, or no, let's speak to DVLA first. Director, manager, we've seen that you've just arrested these two vehicles as part of your exercise in the region. What is the offense? And then if you briefly tell us what the operation is about.
Okay, so we're doing a normal exercise with regard to vehicle with white plates using for commercial. However, we just apprehend these two vehicles. They claim they are coming from the port. There's no DP on it. There's no DV on it. One of the drivers does not even have a driver's license. The other one claims he has, so we've asked him to produce it. Now, strangely, there's even no custom document attached to the vehicle. So there's no custom document, there's no DP, there's no DV, and it's quite suspicious. But at this point, we can't conclude. So what we'll do is that we'll take it to the police station. The owner, or they should just provide the documentation to cover it. Once we go through the documentation, okay, then fine. But of course, they have to explain how they got the vehicle out without DP, driving all the way from Tema to this point without a DP on it, without a DV on it, and even without a custom document of the vehicle.
And you said that the operation is targeted at looking at cars that are registered as private vehicles, operating as commercial vehicles. Has this become rampant nationwide and in the Ashanti region particularly?
I can speak for the region because I head the region, and in the region it is worrying. The trend is become rampant. The high offenders are the Voxys. I don't want to say this, but of course I have to. And some of the Toyota Haze buses. So this has become very rampant, and we feel that we have to check it before, because the other people who are using the vehicle for commercial, they've registered as commercial. They've done all that they need to do to use it as commercial. So we don't have to allow that impunity to continue. Other than that, we'll create, a disorganized vehicle management system in the country.
Thank you very much. And that's the Ashanti Regional Manager for the DVLA, Jerry Aflabo, who says that the use of private vehicles these days as commercial vehicles has become very rampant and quite unfortunate. But he has to say that this is from the Toyota Voxy vehicles, and two that have been arrested at the moment or apprehended at the moment. We have been told by the drivers came out from the port, but unfortunately it has no DV, has no DP, has no custom document, and so suspicious of them, but they are going to send these 2 vehicles to the police station, and we're being told that the drivers also unfortunately do not have their driver's license. These are some of the things that seems to be of worry to the DVLA and the National Road Safety Authority, and also particularly on insurance, because if you board this vehicle as a commercial vehicle but is registered as a private vehicle, you the passenger will find yourself in trouble, because there would not be any insurance to cover up for any damage that you suffer. And so these are some of the concerns that has brought up DVLA and the National Road Safety and even the National Insurance Commission to set up their task force to be on the Accra-Kumasi highway so that they can inspect the...
That's my colleague Nana Boachi Adam from Kumasi. Let's get talking. And Stephen Ato speaks for the DVLA and he's joining me this afternoon for more. Welcome to the program. What is the main focus of this operation and how long is it expected to last?
All right, thank you. I think we put out a release just somewhere last week. And the purpose of it is to clamp down on individuals who are still using.
If you could kindly speak up for me.
Yes, I said we came out with a release last week. And the purpose of the operation is to clamp down on individuals who are still using the 2025 DV plates and then those who are also using expired DP stickers on their vehicles. And so that is the major thing that we have decided to put our task force out there to enforce. The point is that when the DV plates are issued in a year, they are valid till the 31st December of that year. But what happened with what we are dealing with currently was that because by close of last year, 2025, we were not certain of the very date we were going to release the DV plates for 2026. So we allowed an extension and announced same that for those who have 2025 DVs and DP stickers could go ahead and continue using them until such a time when we announce the release of the new DV plates. And we did that since 4th of February this year. And so from February 4th up to now, almost 2 months, there are 2026 DVs in the system, and it is only for qualified vehicles. And so when you pick the road traffic regulations 2012 LI 2180, regulation 23 spells out clearly which vehicle is qualified to be given a DV plate. And so if your vehicle is not qualified, if it's not one that is under the control of a manufacturer or a garage owner, and it is not one that you are driving around to fix one defect or the other, you are not entitled to a DV plate. So if your vehicle is in a pristine state, it is good, there's nothing wrong with it, you're expected to register. So the enforcement is simply, when they get you, they have to take off the DV, and then the DP sticker, they peel it off, and then you are given a cheat by the police that allows you to do one of two things. You either drive the vehicle to the nearest DVLA office and then go and register the vehicle before you can further use it. If your vehicle is one that is qualified with DV plate, you can get one to acquire from DVLA. The second option for you is to drive the vehicle home and go and park it until such a time that you are ready to drive. The dimension Kumasi has added, which is commendable, is that a lot of people come to DVLA and register vehicles for purposes of private use. So what happens is that if you register a vehicle with DVLA for private use, you return to DVLA once every year to renew your roadworthiness. And this is one thing commuters must take into consideration. That vehicle comes back to DVLA once every year to renew its roadworthiness, because the understanding around the use of the... Just a moment.
Hello, Stephen. Unfortunately, we appear to have lost Stephen Ato there. He's the Director of Corporate Affairs at the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, DVLA. African researchers and vaccine manufacturers are being urged to accelerate efforts toward the 2040 target of producing 60% of the continent's vaccines. Experts warn that Africa's heavy reliance on 99% of vaccine imports poses significant health vulnerabilities to its 1.4 billion people. The concern came to the fore at the opening of the two-day West Africa Biomanufacturing Regulation and Market Access Forum in Accra, aimed at strengthening regulatory harmonization and regional collaboration of vaccine manufacturing to meet the 2040 goal. Carlos Coloni has more.
Africa imports up to 99% of its vaccines, leaving its 1.4 billion people vulnerable to major health risk. This dominated discussions at the opening of the West African Biomanufacturing Regulation and Market Access Forum in Accra, which seeks a clear roadmap to boost local production and improve market access. Local manufacturing lead at the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Getenu Abebe, decried Africa's overdependence on developed nations for healthcare, insisting it must change for the continent to achieve true health security and sovereignty.
By 2040, Africa aims to produce 60% of its health products needs locally. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa CDC responds to more than 200 health emergencies every single year. Effective response to outbreaks demands timely access to critical medical countermeasures, vaccines, medicines, diagnostics, personal protective equipment, which to date remain largely imported. This dependency must change if Africa is to achieve true health security and sovereignty.
The acting chief executive officer of the Food and Drugs Authority, Professor Kobina Frimpong Manso Oponi, warned the situation leaves Africa dangerously exposed and called for urgent action to close the gap.
You realize that from the COVID-19, it became clear that countries cannot rely on other countries for their supplies. And so long as we produce just 1% of our vaccines in Africa, it means that whenever there are emergencies or pandemics, we will rely on other countries. Even at the moment, if you look at what is happening in the Gulf region, which is affecting movement of goods and services, these have serious economic repercussions on us. So to help resolve that problem, it will be very important for us to manufacture our own vaccines and other medicine. And that is why Africa is putting in every effort to make sure that we can produce our own vaccines.
The Chief Executive Officer of the National Vaccine Institute, Dr. Soji Tete, challenged African scientists to deliver results, noting that strong political will has already been demonstrated.
Vaccine manufacturing is technically intense. It's also very capital intense. And to make sure that as products are coming onto the market, we sign off-takers way in advance of those products being manufactured. The heads of states themselves said that there is political commitment. Every time the matter of local manufacturing has come up, they have shown political commitment. In Ghana, President Mahama has allocated $50 million to support the manufacturing agenda. The AU has its champion for local manufacturing in President Ruto. So they are saying we want results. If it's commitment, we've already given you the commitment.
Representing the Health Minister, Director of Pharmaceutical Services, Xavier Yevuche, called for a harmonized continental system to drive vaccine manufacturing growth.
A manufacturer in Accra or Dhaka cannot survive on a national market alone. The political challenge of market access requires us to fully operationalize the African Medicine Agency and the ECOWAS regional harmonization. We need a one-stop shop for registration. We must harmonize our standards so that a vaccine produced in Nigeria is trusted in Ghana. Our borders should be bridges for medicines, not barriers.
The forum is expected to produce a roadmap addressing financing gaps, market access, and supply chain weaknesses critical to achieving Africa's 2040 vaccine production target. Carlos Coloni, JoyNews, Accra.
This afternoon, the Director of Operations of NIMOS, Dominic Boa, has sounded serious alarm over the increasing number of miners involved in the illegal mining menace, describing it as a troubling trend. Speaking at the NIMOS Editors Forum and quarterly press briefing in Accra, Colonel Boa revealed that authorities have identified children actively engaged in galamsey, stressing the urgent need for intervention.
One phenomenon we observed is the issue of children in the space. There are minors in the space, and that is a concern. So we've relayed to appropriate authorities, social welfare, through the ministry to see how they handle it. We have the details where we got them, and it's a trend. These are not the only ones, but the ones we laid hands on. Then also some of the high-profile galamseyers who are arrested, we have details of them. What happens is that we leave the NIMOS as an operational arm. We keep to clearing the galamsey from the space. Whenever we arrest, we hand over, if you're a foreigner, we hand you over to immigration, and then locals to the local police and the Attorney General to handle the prosecutions.
Right, and he also disclosed that the task force has seized 94 excavators and arrested over 200 individuals, mostly foreign nationals, as part of nationwide intensified operations against illegal mining.
So far seized, secured in our location, almost 3,000 chamfans destroyed. Those ones, I don't count them. Arrest, we have 237, majority of them are foreigners. Then you have seen strike rate of 87.7. The strike rate is the Directorate of Research. That's what they do. Anytime we move to the field and we meet one of the key parameters, the things we do, the seizures, the arrests, and the distraction, we count it as a positive. So that determines the strike rate. Now, you've seen immobilized excavators. In the field, when we go, we don't have low beds. What we can do is to just immobilize and remove vital components so that they cannot use them. And I must tell you that in the galamsey site, excavator is gone down drastically. We used to meet 10, 20 excavators, but now you hardly meet any of them. The ones you meet there, they are already immobilized. Unfortunately, the galamseyers are also smart. They keep coming out with new ideas on how to fix the excavators. Now, a lot of equipment have been destroyed. Let me reiterate that the metal components in the waterways, we have started collaboration with the Ghana Integrated Iron and Steel Development Corporation, GISDEC. They are currently on the Alcobra. I was there last week with them. And they are packing all the damaged chamfans, metal fabrications which are on the waterway, and will move diligently from one water body to the other.
And my colleague Fatal Bayaga was at the press briefing and now joins me in studio with more. Fatal, NIMOS has been saying that they've been clamping down on illegal miners, particularly foreigners. We understand that some Chinese nationals are part of it. Tell us more.
Absolutely. So NIMOS says that illegal mining is still pervasive, even though they've been doing so much work to be able to address this particular canker that is ravaging forest reserves and farmlands across many parts of this country. But basically on the Chinese nationals aspect, NIMOS says that many of them are involved in this illegality and they are working with their Ghanaian counterparts, which is deeply worrying. In fact, he says that the Chinese ambassador to Ghana himself was quite concerned about the fact that many of his citizens are also involved in this particular illegality. But then he says that they are working with the Chinese authorities to ensure that these persons who come to Ghana to engage in illegal mining activities, when they return to their country, they don't come back to this country. You can take a listen to him.
So I talked about arrest, majority of them Chinese. I must say that the Chinese ambassador is also alarmed at the rate at which the Chinese, they don't pass through his hands. And there is a network or a cabal that traffic these Chinese who come. Sometimes they don't even know Accra. They get visa to stay and straight they are sent to the bush. And that is our own citizens who collaborate with them. So we need to watch that space because these are the people who are destroying our forests, our water bodies. Then I think at Osino also, one night, 32 Nigerians will gloss over the security risk, but that is a huge risk. In collaboration with the national security, we are trying to identify the status of these whenever we arrest them. There's a protocol for the foreigners. They are processed through NIMOS and then to immigration, where the enforcement unit handle them accordingly. Some of them go through the trial process, but majority of them, where we don't have enough facts on them, through the Chinese embassy, they are deported. And I'm told that once they are deported, formally, they are blacklisted and they don't get to come back.
Right, Fatal Bayaga is still in the studio with me. They've also been talking about the weapons that are being used.
Absolutely, Ken. So basically they said that many of these illegal miners are using weapons, illegal weapons. And this is a very, a huge risk for them as the operators of NIMOS. In fact, they said that over the period, they've been able to retrieve about 59 weapons. And according to NIMOS, there are still a lot of illegal miners who are using these particular weapons. But now they are also ready to respond to them squarely if maybe they go to some of these illegal mining sites and then these illegal miners try to maybe fire at them. We can take a listen to him.
There's one other aspect I'll talk about, that is weapons. There are several weapons in a space. As you can see, 59 weapons, there are more. And they are basically pump-action guns in the hands of these galamseyers. And that is a huge risk, a national security risk. Because when they have them in the field, any provocation, they will fire. We had a few brushes where one of my soldiers was shot. Luckily, it was in his thigh and he's recovering. But as I reiterated the last time, NIMOS will not stand by and watch people use weapons against us. We are better trained in the weapons. And therefore, I'll send a warning out there once again that anybody who does, NIMOS will deal with them ruthlessly. It is a problem that we are trying to address, but we have the right to self-defense. And let no galamseya miss that. If you go to the field with weapon and you try to fire it, a lot more will be at you.
Fatal, they say that they've arrested over 200 individuals. What happened to them? Are they being prosecuted right away?
That's a very interesting question, and a lot of people are actually waiting to hear the response of NIMOS on this. NIMOS says that their job is just to go arrest these illegal miners, hand them over to the police and then the AG. So it's now left onto the AG and the police to tell us where these individuals are. So basically, it is the Attorney General who will now tell us whether these persons are being prosecuted or maybe just to tell us where they are at the moment.
Right, thank you very much, Fatal Bayaga, there with that update from NIMOS. You're still watching the polls here on JoyNews. In other stories this evening, the Vice President, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, has expressed deep concern over the rising examination malpractice. She warns that the trend is eroding the credibility of the education system, despite efforts to ensure fairness and transparency. Speaking on behalf of President John Mahama at the 74th Annual WAEC Council meeting, she stressed that this growing menace threatens the Council's core mission.
The 74th Annual Council meeting of the West Africa Examination Council convened key education stakeholders to address the growing challenge of exam malpractice and strategies to safeguard education integrity across the region. At the event, Vice President Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman underscored the urgency of protecting the credibility of examinations.
Therefore, while the innovative mechanisms implemented to ensure fairness, transparency, and integrity in the exam process are commendable, the rise in examination malpractices threatens to undermine these objectives. The growing incidence of falsified results and altered certificates undermines WAEC's mandate. Left unchecked, this risk will erode the credibility on which the entire examination system depends. This is not a challenge for the Council alone. It speaks to a broader responsibility that rests with institutions, communities, citizens, and especially the students themselves. We must therefore be clear and consistent in our response, which is to uphold the integrity of our exams, to reject malpractice in all its forms, and to protect the value of the qualifications we confer.
Deputy Education Minister Dr. Clement Apak reviewed that Ghana has moved from the national WASI to the international version, which will be taken by all West African member countries in May and June 2026.
The Republic of Ghana is pleased to announce the restoration of Ghana's participation in the international version of WAIC's conducted WASI. Ghana will therefore be administering the 2026 WASI with other member states.
Dr. Apak assured that the Ministry of Education remains committed to working closely with WAEC to ensure a system that upholds fairness and integrity in Ghana's examinations. The Council also honored top-performing students through the WAEC International Excellence Award. For JoyNews, Nasi Kumson's report read to you.
A new poll by Global InfoAnalytics shows Dr. Ato Forson, the finance minister, now leading the party's presidential race with 32%, up from 23% in December last year. Haruna Idrisu, who had led since the start of the polling cycle, is now in third place with 23%, down from 26% in November 2025. The chairman of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun-Ketia, is in second place with 25%, up from 22% in December. Vice President Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is in fourth place with 11%, up from 11%, with 14% up from 11% in December. Among NDC voters, Ato Forson now leads with 39%, followed by Esiedun-Ketia with 26%, Haruna Idrisu with 21%, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman with 13%, and among others at 1%. Among floating voters, Ato Forson leads with 44%, followed by Johnson Esiedun-Ketia at 22%, Haruna Idrisu at 20%, Nana Opoku-Agyeman at 11%. Among NPP voters, Ato Forson leads with 41%, followed by Esiedun-Ketia at 23%, Haruna Idrisu at 22%, and Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman at 12%. Let's have a conversation on the back of this. And joining me on the telephone lines right now is the Executive Director of the Global InfoAnalytics, Musa Dankwa. Musa, welcome to the program. What sampling approach was used for this new survey?
All right, thank you very much. The sampling approach we used for this survey is consistent with the approach we used in December, so we can compare like for like. A sample was deployed among general voters in the field face-to-face. A small sample was deployed online, and another sample were deployed via telephone interview. So this is a combined or multimodal survey we conducted for March 2026.
Who were the biggest losers and winners?
Right. From the poll, in terms of the NDC race, the biggest gainer in this race was Ato Forson, who moved from second position in the December poll to a poll position now third place with 32%. That's nearly about 9% or so increase over the period. Johnson Esiedun-Ketia also made some gains from 22% to 25%. The loser in this poll was actually Haruna Idrisu, who lost his poll position from 26% now to 23%. Jane Nana made a fractional gain, also from 11 to 14%, but someone else dropped significantly from 18 to 5% now.
What were the reasons behind people favoring Ato Forson so highly?
No, we don't ask them the reasons for their choices. We just conduct polls and ask people who would you prefer. As to what reason they ascribe, I think we don't want to speculate on that. Others can go on and do that analysis or that survey. But for us, it's a poll, and we don't provide reasons, except where we have provided the answer for them to pick from.
And what time frame were these polls done?
We started the telephone, the online survey around, I think, 5th March or thereabout. We ended it on the 23rd March a few days ago.
That means that if a new poll is conducted a bit later, it could also change, right?
It's a tracking poll. The first one we did February 1. The most recent, besides this one, was December. We are tracking. If it changes, we'll be able to tell you it has changed.
Musa Dankwa, thank you very much. He's the Executive Director of Global Info-Analytics there. And that's it for the polls this evening. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. For more news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com. The news team returns at 7 p.m. with News Prime. My name is Kenneth Jesse. Have a good evening.